Imagine this. You are standing at the edge of a wall that stretches farther than the eye can see. A sheer cliff of ice rising 200 feet straight out of the ocean, glowing faint blue under a midnight sun that never quite sets. The wind screams across it at 100 miles an hour, carrying snow that stings like needles. And somewhere deep inside that frozen barrier, something just moved. Not a penguin, not a seal, something massive, something that should not be there. A low rumble rolls through the ice, felt in your chest more than heard in your ears. And for one heartbeat, the wall cracks open just enough to reveal a sliver of warm, green light pulsing from the other side. Then it seals shut again, leaving only the howl of the storm and the question that will not let you sleep. What is Antarctica hiding that the rest of the world agreed to lock away forever? That is where we begin tonight. Welcome back, friends. Or hello for the first time if you're just slipping under the covers with me. I am Mr. H, your guide through the quiet hours on Mystery History for Sleep. If these whispers in the dark are new to you, do me a small favor while the ice still creaks outside your window. Tap that subscribe button and ring the little bell so the next secret finds you without searching. It costs nothing, and it keeps the stories coming straight to your dreams. Thank you for being here. Now, pull the blanket a little closer, because that crack in the wall is only the first breath of a continent that has been holding secrets for millions of years. We are not crossing the ice wall tonight. We are going to slide beneath it, past the volcanoes that spit gold, past the rivers that run red and never freeze, past the mountains buried so deep they have forgotten the sky. And somewhere in the dark, Admiral Byrd's lost city is still waiting on an iceberg drifting toward the end of the world. Ready? The cold is listening. The Ross Ice Shelf at dawn in 1957. A United States Navy icebreaker slices through the Southern Ocean, its hull groaning against pack ice that clinks like broken glass. The crew is on edge. They have been chasing rumors for weeks. Stories of a barrier so vast it swallows horizons. Then the lookout shouts, "Dead ahead, the ocean ends." Not in a beach, not in a cliff of rock, but in a wall of ice that climbs straight out of the water and keeps climbing until it vanishes into low cloud. The men on deck fall silent. The wall is not a slope, not a ridge. It is a vertical face, 200 feet high in places, glowing pale turquoise where the sun strikes it. Chunks the size of city blocks carve off with a sound like artillery, crashing into the sea and sending up plumes of spray that freeze mid-air. The ship's captain orders engines reversed. They are still a mile away, but the wall feels close enough to touch. Someone pulls out a movie camera. The footage is grainy, black and white, but even 70 years later, it raises the hairs on your neck. An endless rampart of ice marching left and right until the curve of the earth hides the ends. The narrator in the old film calls it the greatest natural wonder on the planet. He does not know the half of it. Fast forward 6 years to 1963. Another American ship, the USS Edisto, is probing the same bay. The Ross Sea is a graveyard of icebergs, some as big as aircraft carriers, others the size of small countries. The lookout spots one that stands out, perfectly flat on top, 9 stories tall, and halfway up its face a dark smear stains the snow. The captain edges closer. Through binoculars, the smear resolves into debris. Wooden planks, torn canvas, thick poles jutting like broken teeth. A helicopter lifts off the deck. From the air, the pattern is unmistakable. The remnants of a camp, frozen into the berg like an insect in amber. 4 telephone poles, each 30 feet long, stick out at odd angles. Tarpaulins flap in the wind, revealing the corner of a roof. The pilot circles once, twice, then radios back. "It looks like Little America, sir. Byrd's old base." The crew stares in silence. Little America. 3 was built in 1940 on solid shelf ice, 3 miles inland. How did an entire outpost end up adrift on a floating island of ice? The berg is unstable. One wrong tilt and it could flip. The captain recalls the chopper. They watch the ghost camp drift south, swallowed by fog, carrying its secrets toward the open ocean. That is the wall in action. It does not just stand there. It moves, it grows, it devours. The Ross Ice Shelf alone covers an area larger than California. In places it is 3 miles thick, enough ice to raise every ocean on Earth 20 feet if it melted. Rivers of liquid water flow beneath it, warm enough to carve canyons taller than the Grand Canyon. Satellites have mapped tunnels wide as highways threading under the shelf, some plunging 2,000 feet before vanishing into darkness. Scientists call them subglacial channels. Others call them doors. Stand on the deck of a modern research vessel today, and the wall still looks endless. GPS says you are at 78 degrees south, but the horizon refuses to curve the way it should. The ice reflects the sky so perfectly that up and down swap places. Sailors have walked off cliffs thinking they were stepping onto solid ground. In 1997, a Norwegian cruise ship got too close. A slab the size of Manhattan broke away with a roar that registered on seismographs in Australia. The wave it threw nearly capsized the ship. The captain later told reporters the wall screamed like a living thing. He was not being poetic. The Antarctic Treaty Nations insist the shelf is just geography, a climatic feature, nothing more. Yet every year the forbidden zone grows. In 2006, Google Earth users noticed patches of the coastline blurred out, replaced by uniform white. NASA's Worldview satellite feed occasionally drops frames over the same coordinates, showing nothing but static for minutes at a time. When pressed, officials blame data corruption. In 2010, a civilian pilot flying a private charter out of Punta Arenas reported his instruments going haywire south of 60 degrees. The compass spun. The altimeter froze at -100 feet, even though he was cruising at 10,000. He turned back. The flight plan he filed listed magnetic anomaly as the reason for abort. The tower logged it without comment. Go back further, to the whalers of the 1820s. Their logbooks speak of the barrier as if it were a creature. One entry from the brig Williams, dated January 1823, struck the ice at noon. It rose sheer from the water like the wall of a fortress, blue as sapphire, with caverns yawning at the base. Soundings found no bottom. At 200 fathoms, a great crack opened and a gust of warm air issued forth, smelling of earth and green things. The men would not stay. The captain ordered sails set and fled north. 3 days later, the Williams vanished with all hands. No wreckage was ever found. Modern icebreakers carry sonar that can peer beneath the shelf. In 2019, the RV Polarstern mapped a cavity larger than Manhattan, its ceiling a smooth dome of ice, its floor black water steaming in sub-zero air. Temperature probes recorded 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees above freezing. Something down there was generating heat. The scientists on board published nothing. The data vanished into classified archives. The wall is not static. It advances and retreats with the seasons, but over decades it has crept northward, swallowing research stations whole. Little America 1, built in 1929, is now 2 miles offshore, buried under 400 feet of new ice. Little America 2 followed. Little America 3 lasted longest, until the iceberg that carried it away in 1963. Admiral Byrd's men left behind tons of equipment, tractors, generators, even a small airplane. Divers have tried to locate the wrecks. They find nothing but smooth ice and silence. In 2012, a team from the British Antarctic Survey drilled a borehole near the shelf edge. At 1,200 feet, they hit void. The drill string dropped 30 feet before catching on something metallic. They pulled up a fragment of riveted aluminum, stamped with United States Navy markings and the date 1946. It came from Operation Highjump, the same expedition that retreated early after losing 13 aircraft and 68 men to unforeseen difficulties. The official report blamed weather. The aluminum told a different story. At night, when the temperature drops to -50, strange lights dance along its face. Green curtains, red pulses, white strobes that move against the wind. Sailors call them ghost lights. Scientists call them ice quakes, electrostatic discharges. Both agree the displays are growing more frequent. In 2021, the Chilean station Presidente Eduardo Frei recorded a burst that lit the sky for 90 seconds, bright enough to cast shadows on the snow. The seismograph spiked at the exact same moment a warm updraft registered on the weather balloon. Something inside the ice exhaled. And still the questions pile up like drift snow. Why does the treaty ban private aircraft from flying more than 60 minutes from a runway when the continent is larger than Europe? Why are mineral claims frozen until at least 2049, when airborne surveys have detected iron, copper, even rare earths in quantities that could power the world for centuries. Why do satellite passes over the Ronne ice shelf occasionally return images with entire sections whited out, as if someone hit delete? The wall does not answer. It has waited 70 million years, since the last dinosaur walked a green Antarctica. It is waiting now, while you lie in the dark listening to my voice. Somewhere behind those 200 feet of ice, the green light pulses again, patient as a heartbeat. The crack is still there, hidden in a fold no map has ever shown. The shelf is only the beginning. Beneath it, rivers run uphill, volcanoes breathe gold, and the bones of a lost world lie dreaming under miles of blue silence. Close your eyes. The wall is listening. Let me take you back 2 million years, before the first human ever shivered at the thought of snow. Deep under what we now call Taylor Glacier, a pocket of ancient seawater got trapped in a crack no wider than your thumb. It was salty, far saltier than the ocean outside, and loaded with iron from rocks that had been grinding against each other since the continent split from Gondwana. Over the centuries, the pocket grew into a hidden lake, then a river, sealed off from sunlight and air. The water stayed liquid even when the surface world plunged to minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit, because salt lowers the freezing point like antifreeze in your car. But the iron kept oxidizing, turning the brine the color of dried blood. For 2 million years, that red water sat in the dark, patient, waiting for a hairline fracture to open. Then, in 1912, a geologist named Thomas Griffith Taylor was hacking his way up the glacier with a pickaxe and a bad case of frostbite. He crested a ridge and stopped dead. A scarlet streak poured from a crack in the ice, steaming in the frigid air, running 20 feet down the glacier face before freezing into rust-colored icicles. Taylor thought he had stumbled on a massacre. He scraped samples, tasted the water, and spat it out. It was saltier than the Dead Sea and metallic on the tongue. He named the spot Blood Falls and wrote in his journal, "The glacier bleeds, and the blood is warm." In 2009, a team from Harvard and the University of Tennessee drilled sideways into the glacier, not down, to avoid contaminating the source. They hit the subglacial river at 400 meters depth. The water gushed out under pressure, 37 degrees Fahrenheit, carrying bubbles of ancient air and microbes that had never seen daylight. DNA sequencing revealed 121 species of bacteria, most of them unknown to science. One strain uses iron the way plants use sunlight, pulling electrons straight from the metal to stay alive. Another ferments sulfate into energy, exhaling hydrogen sulfide that smells like rotten eggs. These creatures are the last survivors of a biosphere that thrived when Antarctica was a swampy rainforest. They have been cut off so long their genetic clocks run slower than ours. A single generation for them might take 1,000 years. The river does not just flow, it pulses. Pressure builds behind ice dams until the glacier groans, then a plug bursts, and the red water jets out in a plume that can reach 50 feet high. In 2016, satellite radar caught one of these surges in real time. The glacier surface lifted 6 inches over an area the size of a football field, then subsided as the water escaped. Seismometers picked up a low-frequency thump every 48 hours, like a heartbeat under the ice. The rhythm is steady, almost mechanical, but no pump on Earth could keep it going for 2 million years. Locals at McMurdo Station, 40 miles away, tell stories after too much coffee in the galley. One mechanic swears he saw the falls glow at night, a dull crimson shimmer that pulsed in time with the aurora. Another claims the water left footprints in the snow, boot-shaped prints that led from the glacier to the sea and vanished. The scientists roll their eyes, but they still check the flow rate every dawn, because sometimes the volume spikes for no reason anyone can explain. In 2019, a drone pilot flew a thermal camera over the falls at midnight. The plume registered 95 degrees Fahrenheit at the exit point, hot enough to melt a hole through pack ice. The heat source is still down there, somewhere in the labyrinth of tunnels. Geothermal vents are one theory, but the nearest volcano is 200 miles away. Chemical reactions between iron and sulfate could generate warmth, but not that much, not that consistently. The third option sits in classified folders, microbial mats thick as carpets, metabolizing at a rate that should be impossible in the dark. If the mats are growing, the river is growing with them, carving new channels, pushing closer to the surface. The falls have a voice. When the wind is right, the water hissing over the ice lip makes a sound like distant screaming. In 2021, a Japanese research team left a hydrophone in the outflow. The recording captured layered tones. A low moan at 20 Hz, too deep for human ears, layered with high-pitched clicks that sped up and slowed down like language. Spectrograms show patterns that repeat every 11 minutes. No one has decoded it yet, but the file is labeled Taylor Anomaly and locked behind 2 passwords. The red water carries more than iron, traces of uranium, vanadium, even gold in parts per billion, enough to turn the icicles into glittering rubies when the sun hits them. Miners would kill for a claim, but the Antarctic Treaty bans extraction until at least 2049, so the falls keep bleeding, untouched, staining the snow for miles downstream. Penguins waddle through the rust-colored slush without a care. The iron is toxic to us but harmless to them. Every surge leaves a scar. The glacier face is pocked with old outlets. Frozen waterfalls, frozen mid-cascade, layers of red ice stacked like geological strata. Core samples read like a timeline. The deepest layer dates to the Miocene, 23 million years ago, when the brine was still clear. The iron bloom started 5 million years later, turning the water the color of Merlot. Each new layer is thinner, meaning the flow is accelerating. At the current rate, the subglacial lake will empty in 400 years, give or take a century. What happens when the pressure drops? Will the glacier collapse into the void, or will something rise to fill it? Tourists on cruise ships get one glimpse from a mile away, through telephoto lenses, and the guides call it nature's abstract art. They do not mention the warm mist that sometimes drifts across the water, carrying a faint smell of sulfur and wet earth. They do not mention the divers who went down in 2018 with underwater scooters and came back shaking, refusing to describe what they saw in the tunnel mouth. The footage from their helmet cams is pixelated, time-stamped, and sealed. The falls are not alone. Radar has found 30 similar brine rivers under neighboring glaciers, all iron-rich, all pulsing. One beneath Beardmore Glacier is 3 times larger, its outflow frozen into a red delta that satellite photos update every week. The network connects, a circulatory system under the ice cap, pumping ancient seawater from lake to lake. If one artery bursts, the others feel it. In 2022, blood falls surged for 6 hours straight, volume triple normal. At the same moment, a station 200 miles away recorded a temperature spike of 8 degrees inside a borehole. The scientists wrote, "Coincidence" in the log, but they extended the drilling moratorium another year. Tonight, somewhere under Taylor Glacier, the microbes are still working, chewing iron, exhaling heat, keeping the Red River alive. The falls will flow again soon. The pressure is building. When it does, the glacier will scream, the snow will turn scarlet, and for a few brief minutes, the Antarctic night will glow like a wound. Lie still. Listen for the thump beneath the silence. It is closer than you think. And while you're drifting there, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is the clock showing on your side of the world? The ice is curious. Mount Erebus rises out of the Ross Island ice like a black fang, 12,400 feet tall, the southernmost active volcano on the planet. Steam plumes from its summit day and night, a white feather against the polar sky, and every few minutes the ground trembles with a cough that echoes across McMurdo Sound. The mountain has been erupting gently for at least 1 million years, maybe longer, and it has a peculiar habit. It exhales gold. Not nuggets, not veins you could mine with a pickaxe, but microscopic crystals, 20 micrometers across, flung out in the gas plume, along with shards of glassy feldspar. The locals call Erebus bombs. The crystals sparkle like fool's gold when the sun catches them drifting down the slopes. In 1972, a New Zealand geologist named Philip Kyle scooped a handful of fresh snow near the crater rim and stared at his glove. Tiny flecks glinted back at him. Under the microscope, they were perfect octahedrons of pure gold. He calculated the volcano was venting about 80 grams a day, 2.8 ounces, enough to fill a shot glass every 24 hours. At today's prices, that is $5,000 drifting away on the wind. The process is elegant and brutal. Deep in the magma chamber, 3 miles below the summit, Temperatures hit 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Gold dissolved in the molten rock rides upward in bubbles of carbon dioxide and sulfur gas. When the bubbles burst at the lava lake, the sudden drop to -20 outside flash freezes the vapor into solids. Gold condenses first, because it has the highest melting point. The crystals nucleate around dust particles and snowflake out of the plume, like metallic dandelion seeds. They land up to 6 miles downwind, peppering the snow in a golden halo no satellite has ever been allowed to image at full resolution. The lava lake itself is a sight that burns into memory. It is a permanent cauldron 200 feet across, one of 3 on Earth that never cool. The surface crusts over in black plates, then cracks open to reveal glowing orange beneath. Every 40 minutes or so, the lake belches, sending lava bombs arcing 200 feet into the air. The bombs cool mid-flight into teardrop shapes and thud into the snow, hissing like hot irons. Climbers who reach the rim describe a roar like a jet engine mixed with the clang of church bells. The heat is so intense that even at -40, the air above the crater feels tropical. Snowflakes evaporate before they touch the ground. In 1979, the mountain claimed its most famous tribute, Air New Zealand Flight 901, a sightseeing DC-10 out of Auckland, was cleared for a low pass over the volcano at 2,000 feet. The pilots wanted passengers to see the lava lake. Whiteout conditions hid the peak. The plane flew straight into the slope at 500 miles an hour. 257 people died instantly. Wreckage scattered across 6 miles of ice. For weeks, the volcano kept erupting, burying chunks of fuselage under fresh ash. Rescuers found a seat cushion still smouldering 3 days later. The official report blamed pilot error and a database typo that put the mountain 30 miles off course. Locals whisper the volcano called the plane in, hungry for metal to transmute into gold. The gold is not the only treasure. The plume carries platinum, silver, copper, even traces of iridium, the stuff of meteorites. In 2004, a team from Los Alamos lowered a gas sampling drone into the crater. The instrument package melted at 800 degrees, but not before transmitting data showing gold concentrations 1,000 times higher than any terrestrial mine. The numbers were so outrageous, the paper was rejected by 3 journals before Nature finally ran it with heavy caveats. The authors suggested the volcano taps a primordial reservoir left when Earth's core differentiated 4.5 billion years ago. Critics called it fantasy. The data disappeared from public servers within a week. Erebus keeps its own weather. Katabatic winds scream down the slopes at 200 miles an hour, scouring the snow into knife-edge sastrugi. Inside the crater, the air is still, almost humid. Ice caves honeycomb the upper flanks, formed when steam tunnels through snow and freezes into crystalline vaults. In 1985, a party of climbers crawled into one and found walls sparkling with gold dust embedded in clear ice. They chipped out a sample the size of a baseball. Assay came back 98% pure. The cave collapsed the next season, sealing the vein forever. The United States Antarctic program maintains a hut 2 miles below the summit, a tin box on stilts to keep it above drifting snow. Every summer, a volcanologist camps there alone for weeks, tending seismographs and gas sniffers. In 2017, the lone occupant, a woman named Sarah Lang, recorded a new rhythm in the eruptions. Bursts, every 11 minutes, synchronized with the blood fall's pulse 400 miles away. She emailed the correlation to McMurdo. The reply instructed her to delete the file and stand down. She kept a copy on a thumb drive hidden in her boot. 2 days later, a helicopter arrived unannounced, extracted her, and flew north. She has not returned to Antarctica since. Satellite radar has mapped magma chambers branching like roots under Ross Island. One reservoir sits directly beneath the old crash site, slowly digesting aluminum from the DC-10. Gold output spiked the year after the disaster, then leveled off. Coincidence, say the officials. The mountain knows better. At night, the crater glows dull red, visible from McMurdo's dorm windows 30 miles away. Insomniacs gather on the porch with coffee, watching the pulse. Sometimes the glow brightens to orange, then white, and the ground shakes hard enough to rattle mugs. Those are the big exhalations, when the volcano clears its throat and flings a fresh handful of gold into the stratosphere. The crystals ride the jet stream north, falling as invisible dust over Patagonia, seeding clouds no one will ever essay. Miners dream of Erebus the way sailors once dreamed of El Dorado. A single cubic kilometer of the plume, if captured, would yield more gold than the richest mine in Nevada. But the treaty forbids it. Article 7 allows inspections, but no nation has ever sent a team to the crater rim. The hut logs are classified. The gold drifts free, untouched, a daily ransom paid to the wind. Locals have a saying, Erebus gives and Erebus takes. The mountain gave Philip Kyle his discovery, then took his funding. It gave Sarah Lang her correlation, then took her career. It took Flight 901 and gave back 80 grams of gold a day for 45 years. The ledger balances in ways no accountant can read. Stand on the crater lip at dawn, when the sun ignites the plume into a golden tornado. The heat pushes up against your face while your boots crunch on -50 snow. Look down into the lake, and you will see your reflection fractured across bubbling lava. Breathe the air, and you will taste metal, sweet, and electric. Somewhere in that cauldron the next crystal is forming, a perfect speck of sunlight forged in hell. It will ride the wind for hours, maybe days, before settling on a glacier no human will visit for 1,000 years. The mountain does not care. It has all the time in the world, and it is still coughing. Start in 1958, when a Soviet tractor convoy is crawling across the central plateau, 3,000 miles of nothing but white. The drivers are hauling fuel drums to a new station they plan to call Vostok. The lead vehicle hits a patch of snow that feels wrong. Too soft, too deep. The treads spin, the engine roars, and the whole rig drops 6 feet in a heartbeat. The crew scrambles out expecting a crevasse. Instead, they stare down at a ridge of bare rock, black and jagged, poking through the ice like the spine of a buried dragon. They radio Moscow. The reply is short. Measure it, mark it, keep moving. The ridge is the first glimpse of the BYRD'S Mountains, an entire range the size of the Alps sealed under 2 miles of ice. The Soviets name the spot subglacial highlands and forget it for 30 years. Then, in the 1990s, airborne radar flown by American and British planes starts stitching together a ghost map. The mountains are real. Peaks up to 11,000 feet, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, a spine running 800 miles from the coast to the pole. The ice above is so thick that pressure turns it plastic. The range flows like taffy, carrying the peaks along at a centimeter a year. But the rock itself has not moved since Gondwana cracked apart 200 million years ago. The BYRD'S are older than the Himalayas, older than the dinosaurs, and they have been asleep under their blanket longer than humans have existed. Radar cannot see everything. In 2004, the European Space Agency launches a satellite called Cryosat, designed to measure ice thickness to the inch. Over the BYRD'S, it records anomalies, patches where the ice is thinner than physics allows, as if something warm is pushing up from below. The data is public for 6 months, then quietly reclassified. A leaked memo from the British Antarctic Survey mentions thermal domes and anomalous uplift. The domes are circular, 100 miles across, and they breathe, rising a few inches in summer, sinking in winter, like lungs under the ice. Drill down and the story gets stranger. In 2011, a Russian team at Vostok Station, directly above the range, punches through 2.3 miles of ice and hits water. Lake Vostok is the size of Lake Ontario, sealed since the continent froze 15 million years ago. The water is under such pressure that when the drill breaks through, it shoots up the borehole like a geyser, freezing into a plug of clear ice laced with bubbles older than the pyramids. The microbes inside are alive, dividing once every 1,000 years, feeding on minerals leached from the bedrock. One species has DNA that matches nothing on Earth. Its closest relative is a bacterium found in deep-sea vents off Iceland. The lake is connected to others. 400 subglacial bodies mapped so far. A hidden archipelago linked by rivers that flow uphill, driven by the weight of the ice above. The BYRD'S are the keystone. They dam the water, channel it, heat it. Geothermal gradients are twice normal, suggesting magma close to the surface. In 2019, a seismic array picks up tremors at depths no volcano should reach. The quakes are harmonic, ringing like bells at frequencies that match the Bloodfall's pulse and the Erebus eruptions. The mountain range, the lake, the volcano, they are wired together, a single organism under the ice. Explorers have tried to reach the peaks. In 2007, a Norwegian-British traverse sets out with ground-penetrating radar and ice-penetrating hearts. They ski for 40 days, towing sleds heavier than cars. At the center of the range, the ice surface domes upward, a gentle hill no map shows. Thermometers in the snow read 32 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough to melt. They pitch camp and drill a shallow core. At 50 feet, they hit rock. Granite polished, smooth as glass, etched with parallel grooves like claw marks. The grooves run north-south, deeper than the drill can reach. Glacial striations are one explanation. The team leader, a geologist named Ingrid Larsen, writes in her diary, "Feels like the mountain was planed by something moving fast and hot. The core is cratered and flown to Copenhagen. It never arrives. The plane diverts to a United States base, and the sample vanishes." Satellites keep watching. In 2021, NASA's ISAT-2 laser altimeter detects a depression forming over the eastern Gamburtsevs, a bowl 2 miles wide, sinking at 6 inches a year. At the same time, the western end is rising. The range is tilting, slowly, like a seesaw. Models predict that in 300 years, the eastern peaks will punch through the ice cap, creating a new non-attack range visible from space. The treaty nations extend the drilling ban another decade. The lakes talk to each other. In 2013, a dye tracer injected into Lake Whillans, 400 miles west, reappears in Lake Vostok 6 months later, bright green against the dark water. The flow path threads under the Gamburtsevs through tunnels wide as subway tubes. Temperature probes show the water warming as it passes the range, picking up heat and minerals. One sample returns with gold colloids, the same signature as Erebus plume. The mountains are a refinery, distilling metal from the mantle and piping it poleward. At night, the ice above the range sings. Long-range microphones lowered into boreholes capture infrasound, moans at 6 Hz, too low to hear but strong enough to vibrate fillings. The pattern repeats every 47 minutes, the same interval as the Erebus belches. Seismologists call it cryoharmonics, pressure waves in the ice. Inuit elders visiting McMurdo for a cultural exchange hear the recordings and go quiet. One woman says the sound is the mountain dreaming, remembering when it walked above the clouds. The Gamburtsevs hold more than rock. In 2018, a magnetometer survey flown at treetop height, under the ice, that means 50 feet above the bedrock, detects linear anomalies, straight lines miles long, magnetized in opposition to Earth's field. The lines form a grid, 90-degree angles, too perfect for nature. The data is presented at a closed session in Geneva. The published abstract mentions possible paleomagnetic reversals. The raw files are encrypted. Water is the key. The subglacial rivers carry heat, nutrients, and something else, dissolved gases that should have escaped eons ago. Helium-3 levels are 10 times terrestrial average, the signature of mantle plumes. The Gamburtsevs sit on a hot spot, a slow leak from the core. In 1,000,000 years, the ice will be gone, and the range will stand naked under the sun, steaming like a newborn continent. Until then, it sleeps, dreaming in seismic code. Lie still and feel the bed under you. That faint vibration, the one you blame on traffic or the neighbor's subwoofer, might be the Gamburtsevs turning in their sleep, 2 miles of ice away from your pillow. The mountains are patient. They have waited 200 million years for the blanket to slip. When it does, the world will look south and see what has been hidden all along. A range older than bones, alive under the ice, breathing slow and deep. If that breath just stirred something in you, keep it close. Hit subscribe and tap the bell, so the next whisper finds you without searching. The ice will remember. 90 million years ago, the spot where James Ross Island now juts from the Weddell Sea was a muddy river delta, alive with cycads, ferns, and the low thunder of sauropod feet. The air smelled of pine resin and rotting fish. The temperature hovered around 65 degrees Fahrenheit even in winter. Rivers braided across floodplains, carrying volcanic ash from erupting peaks to the west. Duck-billed hadrosaurs grazed in herds, their calls echoing like foghorns. Mosasaurs, the length of city buses, patrolled the coastal shallows, snapping at anything that moved. Then the world cooled, the forests died, and the ice came. It came fast. Within 1 million years, the continent was locked in a freezer. The rivers turned to stone, and every living thing was pressed flat between layers of snow that never melted. Fast forward to 2016. A joint Argentine-Swedish expedition is hammering stakes into the permafrost of James Ross Island, hunting for Cretaceous fossils. The island is a wedge of black volcanic rock poking through the ice cap. Windswept and barren, the team is down to their last week when a storm rips the tent lines and uncovers a slab of grey shale the size of a billboard. One graduate student, Maria Valdez, kneels and brushes away loose gravel. A bone gleams, a femur fragment, thick as her thigh, still articulated with a tibia. The rock around it is packed with more. Ribs, vertebrae, teeth the size of bananas. They radio base camp. The reply is a single word: jackpot. Over the next month, they excavate a bone bed 100 yards long. The skeletons are jumbled, as if a flood swept an entire ecosystem into a single grave. Hadrosaurs dominate, adults, juveniles, even hatchlings with milk teeth. Mixed in are mosasaur vertebrae, plesiosaur flipper bones, and the skull of an ankylosaur armored like a tank. Carbon dating pins the layer to the late Campanian, 68 million years ago. The preservation is obscene. Ligaments turn to coal, stomach contents still identifiable as fern fronds and shellfish. One hadrosaur has a mosasaur tooth embedded in its neck, the predator's final bite frozen mid-kill. The star of the dig is a partial skeleton they nickname Elvis. It is a Cryolophosaurus, a theropod 15 feet tall with a flamboyant crest sweeping back from its snout like a pompadour. The crest is hollow, laced with air sacs, probably for display or sound. The bones are lighter than expected, built for speed in a warm climate. Elvis died young. Growth rings in the femur show only 12 seasons. Cause of death: a broken leg, healed wrong, then a flood that buried the carcass before scavengers could scatter it. The team ships the bones to Buenos Aires in refrigerated containers. On the voyage south, the ship's freezer fails for 6 hours. The hadrosaur skin, still flexible after millions of years, begins to smell like wet dog. The island keeps giving. In 2019, a drone survey spots a cliff face freshly exposed by a retreating glacier. The layers red like a library. Bottom third is volcanic tuff from the Jurassic. Middle is river sandstone packed with petrified logs. Top is the Cretaceous bone bed. Pollen trapped in the sandstone matches forests that grew when carbon dioxide levels were 4 times today's. Conifer needles, ginkgo leaves, even fragments of flowering plants. Antarctica was the original greenhouse. The logs are up to 3 feet in diameter, ring counts showing growth spurts of 6 inches a year. One stump still has bark, blackened but intact, with boreholes from insects that went extinct before mammals evolved. Deeper cores tell a darker story. In 2021, a German icebreaker drills offshore and pulls up seafloor mud laced with iridium, the same spike that marks the asteroid impact 66 million years ago. The layer is thinner here, diluted by distance, but the message is clear. The dinosaurs of James Ross Island never saw the fireball. They froze first. A sudden drop of 20 degrees in a decade turned rivers to slush, forests to graveyards. The bone bed is the last supper. Animals huddled together as the snow piled higher than skyscrapers. Not everything stayed dead. In 2018, a paleontologist named Jun Liu cracks open a mosasaur coprolite the size of a football. Inside are fish scales, ammonite beaks, and something unexpected: soft tissue, a chunk of lung, still pink, preserved by cold and pressure. DNA fragments match modern sharks more than reptiles, hinting mosasaurs were warm-blooded. The tissue is rushed to a lab in Seoul. Technicians sequence the genome and find genes for antifreeze proteins, the same ones penguins use today. The mosasaurs were adapting to the chill right up to the end. The island is a time capsule, but it is cracking open. Warming seas eat the glaciers at 10 feet a year. Each summer new cliffs carve into the water, exposing fresh layers. In 2022, a storm surge washes away a moraine and reveals a petrified forest standing upright, roots in volcanic soil, trunks snapped at 40 feet. The trees are Araucaria, cousins of the monkey puzzle trees in Chile. Charred branches suggest a wildfire just before the freeze. Charcoal samples date the burn to 89 million years ago, when lightning struck a forest already doomed by cooling skies. Fossils are not the only relics. In 2020, a team mapping magnetic anomalies finds a basalt dike cutting the bone bed. The dike is younger, only 50 million years old, emplaced when the continent was already iced over. Lava flowed under the ice cap, flash melting a tunnel before freezing solid. The tunnel is still there, a lava tube 30 feet wide, lined with glass-smooth walls. A robot rover sent in records temperatures of 40 degrees Fahrenheit and air pockets rich in carbon dioxide. The tube ends in a chamber where stalactites of ice hang beside stalagmites of basalt. At the far end, the rover's camera catches a glint, a hadrosaur skull half embedded in flowstone, eye sockets filled with clear ice like diamonds. The discoveries pile up faster than publications. A new genus of pterosaur, wingspan 20 feet, found folded like a broken umbrella. A turtle the size of a Volkswagen, shell crushed but intact. Shark teeth with serrations still sharp enough to cut paper. Each find is photographed, catalogued, then crated for shipment north. Half the crates never reach their destination. They vanish in transit, rerouted to warehouses with no public address. The island is shrinking. Satellite photos show the northern tip eroding at 30 feet a year. In 2023, a landslide exposes a cliff of black shale, glittering with pyrite. Embedded in the pyrite are footprints, three-toed theropod tracks, deep and clear, leading to the edge where the cliff drops into the sea. The tracks stop mid-stride. Whatever made them stepped off solid ground into water that froze before it could ripple. At night, the wind off the Weddell Sea carries a smell locals cannot place. Earthy, green, like a greenhouse in July. It drifts across the camp, lingers for minutes, then vanishes. Tents flap, generators stutter, and for a moment the air feels warm. The scientists blame katabatic inversions. The fossils know better. They remember when the island was a delta, when the sun never set, when the only ice was in the mountains far to the south. The bone bed is running out of time. Projections say the island will be underwater in 2 centuries, the fossils dissolved or buried under sediment. Salvage teams work around the clock, floodlights turning night into day. They pry loose a hadrosaur skull the size of a grand piano, wrap it in foam, and winch it onto a barge. As the barge pulls away, the cliff behind it collapses, revealing a new layer, a wall of petrified trunks standing in a perfect circle, as if planted by giants. The circle is 30 feet across, the trunks charred but upright. In the center lies a single bone, long and curved, too big for any known dinosaur. The barge captain radios for instructions. The reply is static. Somewhere under the ice, the rest of the forest waits. Roots locked in permafrost. Seeds that will never sprout. Animals pressed flat but dreaming. The island is only the cover of the book. The pages are still turning, one glacier at a time. Listen to the wind. It carries the sound of leaves that fell 90 million years ago, rustling just beneath the snow. The skull arrived in a plastic crate marked geological samples, flown out on a Chilean Navy Hercules in the summer of 1985. It landed at Punta Arenas, was trucked to a university lab in Santiago, and sat on a shelf for 3 days while the paleontology department argued over whose budget would pay for the X-rays. When the technician finally slid the tray into the machine, the image on the screen stopped every conversation in the room. A human cranium, intact, with a full set of teeth and a bullet-shaped hole just above the left ear. The bone was dark, almost coffee-colored, and the edges of the hole were beveled inward, the signature of a high-velocity round fired at close range. Carbon-14 came back with a date range of 1819 to 1825. The skull belonged to a woman in her early 20s, indigenous, probably from the Yagan people of Tierra del Fuego. She had died on Yamana Beach, South Shetland Islands, 63 degrees south, a place no human was supposed to have set foot before 1819. The beach itself is a narrow strip of black volcanic sand wedged between glaciers and the Southern Ocean. In summer, the snow pulls back just far enough to expose a graveyard of whale bones and rusted tripods from the sealing era. The skull was half buried in a seal wallow, the jaw missing, the cranium cracked but not shattered. Nearby lay fragments of European clay pipe, a brass button stamped with a British naval crown, and a shard of green glass from a gin bottle. The story wrote itself. A sealing schooner out of Liverpool, or New Bedford, a raid on a Yargan camp for fresh water and women, a scuffle, a pistol shot, the body dumped in the snow, the ship sailing north before the evidence froze solid. But the dates do not line up. The first confirmed landing in the South Shetlands was James Weddell in 1823. Sealing logs from the period mention Indians only in passing, always as hostile, never as cargo. The bullet hole is wrong too. Conical Minié balls were not common until the 1840s. The lead fragment recovered from the sinus cavity is round, hand-cast, the kind of slug fired from a smoothbore musket in the Napoleonic Wars. Someone was here earlier, and they were shooting to kill. The woman's story begins farther north, in the channels of Tierra del Fuego. Yargan oral histories collected in the 1930s speak of a girl named Lara who vanished during a seal hunt in the year the big canoes with wings came. The canoes were square-rigged brigs, flying Spanish colors, crewed by deserters from the Wars of Independence. They took women for ransom, traded iron for skins, and left graves no one marked. Lara's people tracked the ship south for weeks, following smoke on the horizon, until the trail ended at the land of endless ice. They turned back when the kayaks began to freeze in the water. In 1819, the Spanish brig San Telmo left Cadiz with 644 souls, bound for Peru to suppress a rebellion. She was last seen limping south of Cape Horn in a gale, sails in tatters, pumps clogged with ice. British whalers reported wreckage in the Drake Passage, spars, a figurehead of St. Telmo, and a single boat with the name painted in gold. No survivors. The official inquiry blamed foundering. The Yargans say the ship kept going, driven by a captain mad with scurvy, chasing a mirage of open water beyond the ice. Yamana Beach holds more than one secret. In 1992, a storm surge unearthed a second burial, a circle of stones around a fire pit, charcoal still black after a century and a half. Inside the circle lay iron nails, a copper kettle dented by a bullet, and the lower jaw of a European male, gold tooth glinting. The jaw had been severed clean, probably by a cutlass. Radiocarbon on the charcoal gave 1821, plus or minus 5 years. The fire pit was built on a layer of seal blubber ash 3 feet thick, evidence of a camp that lasted months, maybe years. Someone wintered here, against all odds, in temperatures that drop to minus 30 before the sun even thinks about rising. The woman's skull, Lara, if the stories are true, has her own voice. In 2005, a forensic odontologist in Oslo examined the teeth under electron microscope. The enamel shows microscopic grooves from a diet of shellfish and penguin eggs, but the molars are worn flat on the left side only, the pattern of someone who chewed seal sinew to soften it for sewing. A hairline fracture in the occipital bone suggests a childhood fall, maybe from a kayak. Most telling, a thin layer of marine diatom algae embedded in the bone pores, species that bloom only in the brackish meltwater ponds of the South Shetlands. She was born here, or spent her last summers here, far from the Fuegian channels. The bullet hole is the loudest part. Ballistics experts recreate the wound with pig skulls and black powder muskets. The bevel matches a .45 caliber lead ball fired from 3 feet, point blank through the temple. Powder burns are absent. The shooter pressed the muzzle to the skin. Execution, not accident. The brass button nearby carries the crest of the Spanish Navy. 1810 pattern. The gin bottle shard is English, green glass blown in Bristol, common on Royal Navy victuallers until 1815. The pieces do not fit one ship. They fit a flotilla, deserters and privateers pooling resources in a lawless corner of the world. In 2010, a Chilean submarine conducting bathymetric surveys off Yamana Beach pings a linear anomaly 30 meters down. A wooden hull, 90 feet long, ribs splayed like a broken basket. The wreck lies in a natural harbour shielded by kelp-covered rocks. Divers descend in dry suits and find the nameboard half buried in silt. San Telmo. The hold is open, barrels scattered, one still sealed with pitch. Inside, musket balls, iron shot, and a leather pouch containing 20 gold doubloons dated 1808. The captain's cabin yields a logbook, pages fused into a solid brick by seawater and ice. Conservators in Valparaiso spend 2 years teasing the pages apart under controlled humidity. The last entry, in faded ink, 4th of September. Ice closes. fired on savages. One woman taken. God forgive us. The woman was Lara. The savages were her escort, 3 men in sealskin kayaks who followed the brig for days, harpooning seals to trade for iron. When the ice thickened, the captain ordered the muskets loaded. The log records the shot, the body thrown overboard, the ship trapped for the winter. The crew ate penguins, then each other. By spring, only 40 men remained, mad with cold and guilt. They refloated the brig on a warm tide and sailed north, leaving the woman's skull to the gulls. The beach keeps her secrets. Every summer, the tide uncovers more. A child's ribcage, too small for European records. A harpoon head of Jagan design lodged in a whale vertebra. A silver crucifix melted halfway, as if held in a fire too long. The stones of the fire pit are arranged in a spiral, a Jagan mourning pattern. Someone returned, years later, to burn offerings for the dead. Lara's skull tours museums now, displayed under soft light, with a placard that says, "Early Contact." The bullet hole is covered by a polite silicone patch. Visitors linger, drawn by the smooth curve of the brow, the delicate flare of the cheekbones. Children ask if she was a princess. The guides smile and change the subject. At night, on Yamuna Beach, the wind off the glacier carries a sound like distant weeping. Old sealers swore the ice itself spoke in the voices of the drowned. Modern researchers blame ventriloquism from pressure ridges, but the skull remembers. It remembers the crack of the musket, the smell of powder, the cold water closing over her face. It remembers the ship that sailed away, and the ones that never sailed at all. Listen closely when the tide goes out. The sand is black with volcanic glass, sharp enough to cut boot soles. Walk the high water line, and you may find a tooth, human, worn smooth by waves. Hold it to the moonlight and it glints like the gold the sealers never found. The skull is still speaking, one fragment at a time, to anyone willing to kneel in the freezing surf and listen. Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd stood on the bridge of the USS Bear in December 1928, coat collar turned up against a wind that could flay skin in minutes, and stared at the Ross ice shelf, as if it owed him money. Behind him, 2 ships, the City of New York and the Eleanor Bolling, groaned under loads of dogs, airplanes, coal, and enough canned beans to feed a small army. Byrd was 40 years old, already famous for claiming the North Pole by air, a claim still argued in smoky bars from Oslo to Manhattan. And now he was betting his reputation, his fortune, and 4 years of his life on a continent no one wanted. His orders from Washington were simple: map it, claim it, bring back stories. His private orders, scribbled in a locked diary, were wilder. Find coal, find uranium, find whatever the hell was making. The compasses spin south of 65 degrees. They built Little America 1 on the Bay of Whales, a natural harbour carved into the shelf where the ice curved like a frozen wave. Huts went up fast prefab walls, tar paper roofs, stoves belching coal smoke into -40 air. Byrd's men drove steel pipes into the ice for radio antennas, strung wire between them, and sent the first live broadcast from Antarctica, crackling across the Atlantic. This is Little America, calling the world. Newspapers ate it up. School kids in Iowa sent postcards addressed to Santa's neighbor. Byrd smiled for the cameras, but at night he pored over aerial photos showing dark smudges under the ice, straight lines, right angles, things that looked machined. The real prize was the Rockefeller Mountains, 200 miles inland. Byrd flew over them in a Fokker trimotor named the Floyd Bennett, skimming ridges at 100 feet while his photographer, Ashley McKinley, leaned out the window with a Fairchild K3 camera the size of a suitcase. The plates came back showing valleys warmer than the coast, patches of bare rock steaming in sub-zero air. Byrd logged it as geothermal activity and told no one else. On the return flight, the compass swung 30 degrees off true, then froze. The pilot, Bernd Balchen, wrestled the stick and landed on fumes. Byrd wrote in his diary, "Something down there doesn't like iron." Little America. One lasted 2 winters. The ice advanced 6 feet a day, swallowing sledges, burying dog kennels. In 1930, the men dynamited a runway on the barrier, flew out the last plane, and torched the huts to keep scavengers away. Byrd sailed north a hero, pockets full of rock samples no one asked to see. He came back in 1933 with bigger toys. 3 ships, 2 airplanes, a tractor train, and a machine that looked like a tank crossed with a yacht. The Antarctic snow cruiser was 55 feet long, weighed 37 tons, and rode on 10-foot balloon tires smooth as billiard balls. Engineers swore it would cross crevasses like a bridge. On the first test run, it sank to the axles in powder snow. Byrd ordered chains welded to the tires, then drove it backward for 92 miles because reverse gave better traction. The crew lived inside for a week: bunks, galley, darkroom, even a typewriter for press releases. The cruiser never went farther than the supply dump. Byrd parked it beside the new base, Little America 2, and used it as a bunkhouse. The war interrupted. Pearl Harbor, Guadalcanal, D-Day Antarctica vanished from headlines. Byrd, now a rear admiral with fruit salad on his chest, lobbied Washington for one more shot. He sold it as science: meteorology, geology, cosmic rays. The Navy heard strategic foothold and gave him 4,700 men, 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and a blank check. Operation Highjump launched in December 1946, the largest expedition ever to hit the ice. The aircraft carrier Philippine Sea froze its deck for ski jump catapults. Destroyers carried landing craft. Submarines prowled the pack ice hunting German U-boats rumored to be hiding in subglacial caves. They built Little America 3 on the same bay, bigger than a football field, with Quonset huts, a hospital, a movie theatre showing Betty Grable reels on loop. Byrd flew the first recon in a Douglas R-4D renamed the George I. Over the Queen Maud Mountains he spotted lakes of open water steaming in -20 air, ringed by green algae. The co-pilot swore he saw movement, something large, breaking the surface. The film came back, fogged. Byrd ordered another flight. The second plane returned with bullet holes in the fuselage and a dead radio operator slumped over his set. The pilot, Lieutenant Commander David Bunger, reported, "Enemy aircraft, disc-shaped, silver, no markings." The official log read, "Ice fragments from explosion." The holes were filed smooth and painted over. Highjump mapped 1.5 million square miles in 8 weeks, more territory than the Louisiana Purchase. Photographers shot 10,000 feet of film. Then, on February 26, 1947, Byrd ordered full retreat. Ships weighed anchor mid-season, leaving half the supplies crated on the ice. The official reason: approaching winter. The real reason leaked years later in a letter to a friend: "We were not alone down there." The snow cruiser never moved again. Crews drained the fuel, removed the batteries, and chained the doors. Byrd posed for a photo on the hood, smiling like a man who had seen too much. The cruiser sat through 3 more summers, then the ice closed over it. Little America 3 folded like a card table. By 1950, the entire camp was buried under 30 feet of snow, radio towers sticking up like periscopes. 16 years later, in January 1963, the USS Edisto was breaking ice in the Ross Sea when the lookout spotted a berg the size of a city block. 9 stories tall, flat on top, with a dark scar running halfway up the face. The captain edged closer. Binoculars resolved the scar into wreckage. Wooden planks, canvas, 4 telephone poles jutting at 45 degrees. A helicopter lifted off. From the air, the pattern was unmistakable. Quonset hut frames, a collapsed radio shack, the distinctive red and white checkerboard paint of the snow cruiser's spare tire covers. The pilot radioed, "It's Little America, sir. The whole damn base." The berg had carved off the shelf, carrying the camp with it. The poles were the same ones Byrd's men drove in 1940. The canvas was stamped U.S. Antarctic Service. The crew landed on the berg's summit. Snow had drifted into the huts, freezing pipes into sculptures. A calendar on the wall read, February 1947. A coffee pot sat on a Primus stove, ground still inside. In the radio room, tubes glowed faintly. Someone had left the set on standby. The helicopter pilot tried the key. Static, then a voice, faint and distorted. "George I, do you read?" Over. The frequency was dead. The batteries should have been flat for 16 years. They searched for the snow cruiser. Radar pings showed a large metal object 30 feet down, wedged between ice layers. The berg was unstable. A crack zigzagged across the landing zone. The captain ordered evacuation. As the chopper lifted, the berg groaned and split along a pressure ridge. A slab the size of a house sheared off, taking half the camp with it. The last thing the pilot saw was the cruiser's roof glinting through a fresh fracture, tire still chained to the bumper. The berg drifted south, caught the Antarctic circumpolar current, and vanished into the Weddell Sea Gyre. Satellites tracked it for months, a white island with a ghost town on top. Then it rolled, crushed by its own weight, and sank in water 2 miles deep. Divers sent down in 2001 found nothing but smooth silt and a single dog tag engraved J. R. McCoy, USN. Byrd never saw the iceberg. He died in 1957, asleep in his Boston townhouse, officially of natural causes. His papers, released under FOIA in the 1990s, include a locked diary opened with a court order. Entries from 1947 are frantic. February 23. Flew over Warm Lake. Saw structures, metallic, not ours. Pursued by discs, lost 2 men. March 1. Orders from Washington pull out. Do not engage. A final note, dated the day Highjump sailed. The land beyond the pole is not what we thought. Tell no one. The diary ends there. The next page is torn out. Little America 4 was built in 1956. 2 miles inland, on bedrock this time. The Navy bulldozed the old site flat, poured concrete, and forgot it. But the ice remembers. Every decade a new berg calves, carrying fragments. A wing strut here, a dog sled there. In 1989, a Japanese whaler hauled up a net full of frozen spam cans labeled U.S. Navy 1946. In 2004, Argentine fishermen found a life raft adrift off South Georgia, canvas stenciled Little America 3, Do Not Abandon. McMurdo Station keeps a small museum in a Quonset hut near the chapel. One display case holds a single artifact from the iceberg, a brass plaque pried from the snow cruiser's dashboard. It reads, "Property of the United States Antarctic Service. If found, return to Rear Admiral R.E. Byrd." The plaque is polished, bright, fingerprints erased. No one admits to touching it. At night, when the katabatic winds die and the temperature drops to -60, the ice over the old camp creaks like a ship under sail. Radio operators on night watch sometimes pick up a signal on the emergency band, a slow, deliberate Morse code spelling LA3. The transmission lasts 30 seconds, then fades. The antenna array points south, toward the spot where the berg vanished. Technicians blame solar flares. The logbooks list it as ghost traffic. Byrd's empire is gone, scattered across the seafloor in pieces no bigger than a car. But the maps he drew still circulate in locked drawers at the Pentagon. Coastlines that do not match modern charts. Lakes labeled warm. A handwritten note in the margin. Entrance at 78 degrees 30. S. 165 degrees W. Depth unknown. The coordinates put it under 2 miles of ice, directly above the Gamburtsev anomaly. The snow cruiser sleeps with the fishes, batteries long dead, tires flattened by pressure. Fish swim through the galley where men once played poker for cigarettes. Algae grow on the windshield where Byrd stood dreaming of continents beyond the pole. The cruiser will outlast us all. Steel that thick takes 10,000 years to rust in cold water. Stand on the Ross Ice Shelf today, where Little America once stood, and the snow is smooth as glass. Drill down 30 feet, and you hit the old runway, asphalt still black under a thin crust of ice. Deeper, the huts wait, walls bowed but intact, calendars frozen on February 1947. The stoves are cold, but the coal scuttles are full. A single glove lies on a bunk, fingers curled as if waving goodbye. Byrd's voice crackles across the years in a 1954 radio interview. The one conspiracy hunters quote until the tape warps. "I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown." He died 3 years later, taking the coordinates with him. The empire is lost, but not forgotten. Every summer a new crack opens in the shelf, exhaling warm air that smells faintly of aviation fuel and coffee. The ice is speaking Byrd's language, one groan at a time. Somewhere under the white, The snow cruiser's headlights still burn, waiting for a pilot who will never return. The continent keeps its own council, and the Admiral's ghost stands watch on a bridge that sank long ago. December 1st, 1959. A hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. Smells of cigar smoke and fresh ink. 12 men in dark suits, some in uniform, some in tweed, pass a single pen around a mahogany table. They represent the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, Argentina, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, France, Belgium, Japan, and South Africa. No cameras, no press, just a stenographer in the corner and a map of Antarctica spread like a white tablecloth. The document in front of them is 31 pages long, 14 articles, and it will lock the continent tighter than any chain. They sign in silence. Outside, snow falls on the Potomac, soft and harmless. Down south, the real snow is already 2 miles deep and listening. Article 1. There shall be no military activity. Article 2. Freedom of scientific investigation. Article 7. Any party may inspect any installation, any time, without notice. Article 9. Amendments require unanimous consent. They shake hands, pose for one official photo, and the Antarctic Treaty is born. The press release calls it a triumph of peace. The fine print calls it a vault. The idea started in 1957, the International Geophysical Year, when 67 nations agreed to study Earth together. Scientists from east and west shared seismic data, launched rockets, drilled ice cores. In Antarctica, they built bases side by side. Americans at McMurdo, Soviets at Vostok, Brits at Halley Bay. They swapped vodka for bourbon, argued over hockey scores, and quietly noticed the same anomalies. Warm lakes under the ice, magnetic spikes, radar returns that looked like buried cities. When IGY ended in 1958, the politicians realized the continent was a Pandora's box with no lid. Better to nail it shut than let the Cold War spill onto the ice. The treaty is elegant in its omissions. It freezes territorial claims 7 countries had staked slices like pie, but does not cancel them. Argentina still prints maps showing the peninsula as Antártida Argentina. The U.S. reserves the right to claim anything, anytime. The Soviets plant flags and smile. Mining is not banned, it is simply postponed. Nuclear explosions are forbidden, but nuclear power plants for bases are fine. Tourism is allowed, but only if you pay a bond, carry insurance, and promise not to touch a rock. Cruise ships glide past penguin colonies, passengers snapping selfies from the rail, while helicopters overhead enforce a 50-foot buffer zone. Break it, and the fine is $10,000 per violation, payable to whichever nation issued your permit. Inspections are the treaty's teeth. Any signatory can fly in unannounced, demand to see every lab notebook, every freezer, every closet. In practice, it happens rarely. The first U.S. inspection of a Soviet station came in 1963. The Soviets returned the favor in 1964. Both sides found nothing but vodka and frostbite. The last public inspection was 1991. A Norwegian team poking around McMurdo's waste incinerator. Since then, silence. The treaty says, without notice, but notice is always given diplomatic cables, flight plans, polite emails. Surprise is a courtesy no one extends. The Madrid Protocol of 1991 added environmental armor. No mining for 50 years, renewable in 2048, only if every nation agrees. Waste must be shipped out. Even pee is frozen and flown north. Dogs were banned in 1994, too many puppies chewing seismic cables. The continent became the cleanest landfill on Earth, and the most expensive. A single drum of diesel costs $200 to deliver, $500 to remove if it leaks. McMurdo Station is the treaty's showroom. 3,000 people in summer, 1,000 in winter, living in dorms that look like college campuses dropped on Mars. There is a coffee shop called the Coffee House, a general store with Antarctic price chocolate, a post office that cancels stamps with penguin postmarks. 2 Wells Fargo ATMs sit in a heated shack, the southernmost cash machines on the planet. They dispense US dollars only. The treaty forbids local currency. Researchers cash checks, buy souvenirs, and fly home. The ATMs are serviced by helicopter from Christchurch, New Zealand, because no road reaches the ice. Tourism is the loophole everyone pretends to ignore. 100,000 visitors a year now, up from 4,000 in 1990. Most see the peninsula from ships, land for an hour, take a photo with a penguin, leave. The treaty's operator, IAATO, limits landings to 100 people at a time, no more than one ship per site per day. Guides carry radios, count heads, herd passengers like sheep. A single unauthorized rock in a pocket earns a $10,000 fine and deportation. In 2007, a tourist smuggled out a fossilized leaf. The ship was met by Chilean naval police in Ushuaia. The leaf was confiscated, the passenger banned for life. The treaty's real power is in what it does not say. Article 4 freezes claims but does not resolve them. Overlaps cover half the continent. Britain, Argentina, and Chile all claim the same wedge of the peninsula, the US. And Russia claim nothing but recognize nothing. If the treaty collapses, the pie gets carved with knives. In 2048, the mining moratorium ends. Under the ice lie iron, copper, uranium, rare earths, maybe oil. A single deposit in the Transantarctic Mountains could power Europe for a decade. The treaty nations meet every year in rotating capitals, Hobart, Helsinki, Cape Town, to renew the handshake. No one mentions the countdown. Science is the treaty's alibi. Stations dot the coast like Christmas lights. 30 year-round, 70 in summer. They study ozone holes, cosmic rays, penguin poop. Vostok Station drills the deepest ice core on Earth, 4 kilometers down, trapping air from 700,000 years ago. Halley VI sits on hydraulic legs that jacket above rising snow. Dome C hosts telescopes peering through the driest air on the planet. The data is shared, mostly. Some files vanish into classified folders. Neutrino bursts from under the ice. Gravity anomalies over the Gambutsevs. Radar returns labeled non-geological. The treaty polices the sky. No aircraft may fly more than 60 minutes from a runway without survival gear for every soul on board. The continent is larger than Europe. 60 minutes at jet speed covers a postage stamp. Commercial flights detour hundreds of miles. Private jets need permits, fuel caches, and a diplomatic nod. In 1989, Qantas ran sightseeing charters over the ice. The treaty shut them down after one season. Today only military cone 130 seconds and Russian Ilyushins land on blue ice runways, skis, screeching like banshees. Enforcement is a shell game. Crimes in Antarctica are prosecuted by the offender's home country. A murder at McMurdo goes to US. Federal court. A theft at Murney goes to Moscow. Tourists fall under the flag of their ship. In 2000, a New Zealand cook stabbed a colleague over a card game. He was flown to Christchurch in handcuffs, tried, and jailed. The treaty has no police, only consensus. Break the rules and your nation loses voting rights at the next consultative meeting. No one risks it. The door is locked, but keys exist. China joined in 1983, built Great Wall Station, then Zhongshan, then Taishan, then Kunlun at the Dome's summit. India planted Maitri in 1989. South Korea broke ground on Jangbogo in 2014. New players, same rules. They sign, they inspect, they smile. Under the table, budgets balloon. China's icebreaker Snow Dragon 2 can crush 2-meter ice at 3 knots. Russia's new station Vostok will drill deeper than ever. The treaty welcomes them with open arms and closed files. Satellites are the treaty's eyes. Every nation launches birds that peer down in infrared, radar, gravity. Public feeds show white expanse. Classified feeds show heat blooms under the ice. Linear features under the Ronner Shelf. A perfect circle 2 miles wide near the pole that pulses every 11 minutes. The data is shared at closed sessions, then buried. In 2017, a commercial satellite operator accidentally released high-res images of the peninsula. Within hours, the feed went dark, replaced by cloud cover that lasted a week. The treaty's greatest trick is making the continent boring. Guidebooks call it the last wilderness. Tour brochures promise pristine beauty. The truth is managed chaos. Fuel spills cleaned before reporters arrive. Waste incinerated at sea. Science papers vetted by committees. In 1998, a US station burned trash in open pits. The EPA equivalent fined them internally and moved the pits indoors. In 2007, Russia dumped old reactors into the Arctic. Antarctica got stricter rules the next year. The door creaks open for a moment every decade. In 2004, the treaty parties agreed to protect 85 new areas: marine sanctuaries, historic sites, fossil beds. The Ross Sea became the world's largest marine protected area, 1.5 million square kilometers. No fishing for 35 years. Environmentalists cheered. Fishermen grumbled. Krill fleets moved east. The treaty smiled and renewed the handshake. At night, the continent is quiet except for the ice. It groans, pops, sighs. Stations record the sounds on seismographs that double as baby monitors for the planet. The treaty listens too, through hydrophones in the Southern Ocean, microphones in boreholes, sensors on buoys. The data streams to servers in Maryland, Moscow, Hobart. Patterns emerge. A 11-minute pulse. A warm river under Taylor Glacier. A magnetic flip over the Wilkes subglacial basin. The patterns are filed under natural phenomena and locked. The treaty is 55 years old now, older than most of its signatories were when they put pen to paper. The men in the ballroom are gone. Byrd in 57, the Soviet delegate in 72, the Argentine admiral in 91. Their successors meet in glass towers, sip fair trade coffee, and renew the pact with the same words. The door stays locked. The key is unanimous consent, and no one is willing to be the first to turn it. Stand on the ice at midnight in summer, when the sun circles low and the sky is peach and steel. The horizon is a white line sharper than any blade. Somewhere beyond it, the Gambutsevs dream, the lakes steam, the volcanoes cough gold. The treaty stands between you and them, a paper wall thicker than steel. It says peaceful purposes only. It says science for all. It does not say what happens when the moratorium ends, when the ice melts, when the door finally swings wide. The snow falls soft and harmless, covering footprints that were never there. The treaty watches. The continent waits. The door is open. No one is coming through, but you are already inside the dream. Drop a line below where on the map are you right now, and what hour is ticking past your window. The continent wants to know who keeps it company in the dark. The ice remembers the sound of boots. In January 1939, the MS times Schwabenland times a squat, black-hulled catamaran built for polar whaling steams south under a sky the colour of tarnished steel. On her aft deck sits a pair of Dornier Wal flying boats, wings folded like sleeping gulls. The captain, Alfred Richer, stands at the rail with a Leica camera, filming the Ross ice shelf as it rises from the sea like a white curtain. His orders come straight from Hermann Goering. Map the continent, claim it, find coal, find whales, find whatever the Reich needs to survive the coming war. The crew, 68 men, half scientists, half sailors, drop aluminum arrows stamped with swastikas every 10 miles. The arrows clatter onto the snow and vanish within hours, swallowed by drift. Richer names the territory Neuschwabenland, New Swabia, and plants a flag on a Nunatak no one will see again for 60 years. They stay 6 weeks. The flying boats launch from steam catapults, skim the ice at 100 knots, photograph 600,000 square kilometers. The maps come back crisp. Coastlines, mountains, a warm water oasis at 71 degrees south, 10 degrees west coordinates Richer marks with a red circle and the word Mühlig Hoffmann. The pilots report steam rising from cracks, patches of bare rock, pools of liquid water ringed by green moss. One photograph shows a straight line cutting across a glacier, too perfect for nature. Richer labels it possible runway. The film is developed in a darkroom below decks, prints locked in a safe. When the Times Schwabenland Times docks in Hamburg in April, the crew is sworn to silence. The maps are stamped Times, Geheim Times, and filed in the Reich Chancellery. The war eats the expedition. Richer is reassigned to Norway. The flying boats are melted down for Messerschmitts. Neuschwabenland becomes a footnote in naval archives until 1945, when the Reich is crumbling and the rats are jumping ship. July 10th, 1945. U-530 surfaces off Mar del Plata, Argentina. The commander, Otto Vermuth, surrenders to a stunned naval officer. The sub is stripped of torpedoes, logs water-stained and half-burned. The crew, 54 men, no officers above lieutenant, claim they left Kiel in February, sailed south, and spent months in the Weddell Sea. They speak of unloading crates at a place called Base 211, coordinates classified, then scuttling a sister boat, U-977, to hide the trail. Argentine intelligence interrogates them for weeks. The story holds: warm caves, geothermal heat, diesel generators humming under the ice. The interrogators laugh until they find a map in Weymouth sea bag, hand-drawn, showing tunnels branching from the Mühlig-Hoffmann oasis. U-977 arrives 2 months later, August 17th. Commander Heinz Schaefer is younger, cockier. He says they ferried special cargo South scientists, blueprints, gold bars in lead-lined boxes. The sub's batteries were dead. They drifted on surface currents for weeks. Schaefer refuses to name the cargo. The Americans take him to Washington. He vanishes into Camp Ritchie, emerges in 1947 with a new name and a farm in Virginia. The subs are scrapped. The crew's scattered. The map disappears. The legend grows in the dark. Post-war occult circles, the Vril Society, the Thule Society, claim the expedition found more than warm water. They speak of Die Glocke, a bell-shaped device that bent gravity, powered by red mercury and something called Zerum 525. Blueprints allegedly smuggled south in U-boat torpedo tubes. Test flights from an underground hangar carved into the Mühlig-Hoffmann Mountains. Pilots in silver discs that climbed straight up, vanished, reappeared miles away. The stories leak in pulp magazines, then in declassified OSS files labeled fantasy. Operation Highjump smells the smoke. Byrd's 13 ships carry photographers, but also marine raiders and depth charges. In February 1947, a PBM mariner flying over Neuschwabenland reports hostile aircraft, high speed, no insignia. The plane returns with a hole the size of a basketball in the tail. The pilot, John Sayerson, files a report. Silver disc, climbed vertically, fired something that melted the rudder. The report is reclassified. Weather balloon. Sayerson is transferred to Alaska, dies in a crash 2 years later. The caves are real. In 2007, a Norwegian traverse skiing across the Mühlig-Hoffmann Plateau finds a steel hatch, half buried in blue ice. It is 2 meters wide, riveted, stamped with a faded eagle and swastika. The hinge is frozen solid. They pry it with a plasma cutter. Inside, a tunnel 10 meters high, walls smooth as glass, rails embedded in the floor. The air is warm, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, smelling of diesel and ozone. Lights bear bulbs on a cable flicker once, then die. The team retreats when the ice groans overhead. They seal the hatch with welding rods and radio Oslo. The reply: do not re-enter. Mark and move on. The coordinates are scrubbed from public GPS. Satellite radar finds more. In 2012, the European Space Agency's Cryosat 2 maps a void under the mountains. A cavern, 3 kilometers long, roof supported by pillars of ice. The floor is flat, reflective metal or concrete. The image is released, then pulled within hours. A leaked version circulates on fringe forums, annotated with arrows. Hangar entrance, vent shaft, possible runway. The resolution is too low to confirm, high enough to dream. The Nazis loved caves. In 1943, they built metalwork under the Harz Mountains, slave labor carving tunnels for V-2 rockets. Blueprints show similar layouts for Base 211, main gallery 200 meters wide, side chambers for generators, barracks, a hospital, power from geothermal steam, water from subglacial lakes. The plan called for 10,000 colonists, SS officers, scientists, racially pure women, selected from the Lebensborn program. U-boats delivered them in convoys code-named Walrus. Logs recovered from U-530 mention package Odin, a crate the size of a piano, handled with lead gloves. The Vril Society enters the story sideways. Maria Orsic, a Vienna medium with waist-length hair, claimed contact with beings from Aldebaran. She sketched flying discs in 1919, blueprints allegedly refined by SS engineers. The society met in Berlin basements, chanted in Sumerian, drank bull's blood. Himmler funded them through the Ahnenerbe, the Nazi occult bureau. In 1944, Orsic vanished. Rumor says she flew south on the last U-boat out of Norway, carrying the plans in a titanium tube. The echoes keep coming. In 1976, a British Antarctic survey team, drilling near the Mühlig Hoffmann, finds a metal cylinder embedded in 2-million-year-old ice. It is aluminum, stamped Reichsadler 1944, filled with microfilm. The film shows schematics: a disc with counter-rotating rings, mercury plasma, electromagnetic coils. The Brits fly it to Farnborough. It vanishes into a vault marked Historical Interest. A copy surfaces in Buenos Aires in 1981, sold to a collector for $1 million. The collector dies in a car bomb. The film disappears again. Warm water is the smoking gun. Geothermal vents under the mountains keep tunnels ice-free. In 2019, a German research submersible, the Times Polarstern **, maps hydrothermal plumes at 200 meters depth off the coast. The water is 40 degrees Celsius, rich in iron and manganese, perfect for electrolysis, perfect for powering something big. The plume traces back to the Mühlig Hoffmann oasis, the same spot richer circled in red. The base is still staffed, some say. Ham radio operators in the Falklands pick up Morse code on 80 meters. Short bursts, German call signs, coordinates in the Queen Maud land grid. The signals fade when satellites pass overhead. In 2005, a Chilean C-130 flying supplies to Patriot Hills, diverts for weather, and overflies the area at low altitude. The crew reports lights on the ice steady white, arranged in a triangle. The flight recorder captures a voice on guard frequency. *Achtung, unidentified aircraft. You are in restricted airspace. The accent is Berlin. The year is 2005. The treaty nations know. Inspections are announced months in advance. Routes pre-approved. In 1991, a joint US-Russian team flies over Neuschwabenland in a ski-equipped Twin Otter. The pilot reports anomalous radar return, metallic, large. The co-pilot photographs a straight scar in the snow, 2 kilometers long, edges melted smooth. The film is developed at McMurdo, then sealed. The official report, crevasse field. The ice is closing the door. The Mühlig Hoffmann oasis is shrinking, glaciers advancing 10 meters a year. In 50 years, the hatch will be under 100 meters of snow. The tunnels will flood, the generators will rust. The discs, if they exist, will sleep forever. Or maybe not. In 2021, a Chinese icebreaker, the Times Shuilong 2 *, conducts routine mapping in the same grid. The crew offloads crates marked scientific equipment. Satellites track a warm plume rising from the mountains for 6 weeks, then stopping abruptly. The Nazis are gone, but the echo lingers. Every summer, a new crack opens in the ice, exhaling warm air that smells of machine oil and sauerkraut. Ski-doo tracks appear overnight, leading to blank snowfields. Drones sent to follow lose signal at the same coordinates. The treaty parties meet, renew the handshake, and pretend not to notice the lights under the ice. Stand on the plateau at midnight in January, when the sun circles low and the snow glows pink. The wind drops. The silence is absolute. Then you hear it, a low thrum, like a generator far below, pulsing every 11 seconds. The ground vibrates under your boots. You kneel, press your ear to the ice, and the thrum becomes a voice. Faint, speaking German you do not understand. The words are lost, but the message is clear. We are still here. The Reich lasted 12 years. The ice has lasted 12 million. Guess which one wins? July 22nd, 2018. A former Navy SEAL calling himself Spartan 1 sits in a dimly lit studio in Los Angeles. Microphone inches from his lips. Voice low and steady. The interviewer, investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe, leans forward, eyes wide. Spartan 1 describes a mission he cannot date, precisely classified. Black budget. Insertion by submarine under the Ross Ice Shelf. His team, 8 men, dry suits, rebreathers, underwater scooters. Objective: recover a package from coordinates buried in a 1947 Byrd report. They surface inside a cavern lit by bioluminescent algae, air warm enough to fog their masks. 50 meters ahead, an octagonal structure rising from the ice floor. Walls matte black, no seams, 8 sides, perfect as a stop sign. A door thick as a bank vault stands ajar. Inside, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, soft green light with no visible source. Walls etched with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The symbols shift when stared at, like optical illusions in motion. Spartan 1's team photographs everything. One man touches a wall. His glove melts, skin blistering instantly. They grab the package, a cylinder, the length of a forearm, warm to the touch, and exfiltrate. The sub-commander refuses to surface again. The package is sealed in lead, flown to a facility. Spartan 1 will only call the vault in Nevada. He signs an NDA thicker than a phone book, retires with PTSD, and 20 years later spills the story on Howe's podcast. The episode streams to 500,000 listeners in a week, then vanishes from servers. Mirrors pop up on dark web torrents. The symbols are analyzed by linguists. No match to Sumerian, no match to anything. One frame-by-frame screenshot shows a glyph that rotates 90 degrees between captures. The structure is not alone. In 2016, the Antarctic Neutrino Telescope Array, ANITA, hangs from a high-altitude balloon 38 kilometers above the ice, hunting cosmic rays. It detects particles emerging upward from the bedrock, energies 1,000,000 times higher than the Large Hadron Collider. The trajectory is impossible. Neutrinos should pass through Earth, not originate inside it. The signals cluster under the Marie Byrd land volcanoes, the same region Byrd flew over in 1947. Physicists publish in Times Physical Review letters *, title it Anomalous Upward Events, and suggest sterile neutrinos or dark matter. The raw data includes audio, a low-frequency hum at 11 Hz, the same pulse as Bloodfall's, Erebus, Gamburtsev's. The paper is retracted 6 months later for methodological concerns. The authors go quiet. Satellite radar finds the octagon. In 2019, the German Tandem X mission maps the Ross Shelf at 1 meter resolution. A perfect 8-sided depression, 200 meters across, sits under 300 meters of ice. The walls are vertical, the floor reflective. The image is released in a public dataset, then overwritten with cloud cover. A cached version circulates on Reddit, annotated with measurements. Door height matches Spartan 1's description to the centimeter. The depression is warm thermal infrared, shows a heat bloom of 5 degrees above ambient, pulsing every 11 minutes. The Piri Reis map enters the chat. Drawn in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral on gazelle skin, it shows the Antarctic coast ice-free, rivers flowing to the sea, mountain ranges that match modern subglacial topography. The source, Piri claims, is ancient kings. Cartographers call it coincidence projections from older charts. But the coastline hugs the real Queen Maud land within 20 miles, impossible without aerial survey. In 1960, a U.S. Air Force hydrographer, Charles Hapgood, overlays the map on a globe. The fit is eerie. He writes to Einstein. Einstein replies, "Intriguing. The map is locked in Topkapi Palace. High-res scans are denied to researchers. Pyramids under the ice." In 2012, Google Earth users spot a triangular shadow in the Ellsworth Mountains. Sides equal, base aligned north-south. The image goes viral, labeled Antarctic Pyramid. Geologists measure 400 meters per side, height matching Giza. A British Antarctic survey team skis in 2015. They find a Nunatak natural peak eroded into a stepped profile by wind. No chambers, no corridors. But the base is littered with quartz crystals the size of fists, arranged in a grid. The crystals are warm, 35 degrees, no geothermal source nearby. The team collects samples. The crates arrive at Port Stanley empty, paperwork lost. The whispers are older. In 1938, the German Schwabenland expedition reports green lights under the ice at night, visible from the ship's deck. The log entry is crossed out, rewritten as Aurora. In 1947, Byrd's pilots photograph a glowing oval over the transantarctic mountains, size of a football field, hovering 50 feet above the snow. The negative is overexposed. The print shows only white. In 1997, a Chilean C-130 crew films a metallic sphere pacing their plane at 10,000 feet. The sphere accelerates vertically, vanishes. The tape is confiscated by U.S. personnel at Punta Arenas. The crew is debriefed for 6 hours. The octagon has neighbors. In 2021, the IceCube Neutrino Observatory at the South Pole detects a cascade of particles from a point source under the Ronne ice shelf. The energy signature matches Anita's anomalies but localized, a buried accelerator, or a reactor. The coordinates overlap a magnetic low mapped by NASA's GRACE satellites, gravity weaker by 5 milligaules, as if mass is missing. The IceCube team publishes a preprint. Funding is cut the next quarter. The lead author takes a job at CERN. Spartan 1's cylinder is the key. In 2019, a whistleblower from Groom Lake area, 51 posts, grainy photos on 4chan, a matte black tube, hieroglyphs glowing faint blue, ends capped with iridescent alloy. The post is deleted in minutes. Archives capture it. The symbols match the octagon walls. A materials scientist analyzes the alloy from metadata. Density lower than aluminum, strength higher than titanium, isotopic ratios not terrestrial. The thread explodes. Then the user's account is terminated. The whispers leak in dreams. Station personnel at Amundsen Scott report the same nightmare. Standing inside the octagon, green light pulsing, a voice speaking in clicks and tones that translate directly to thought. You are not the first. Sleep studies show REM spikes at 3:11 local time every 11 minutes. The medical officer blames cabin fever. The EEG printouts are shredded. The treaty knows. Inspections avoid the Ross Shelf anomaly. In 2018, a joint U.S. Russian team scheduled to drill near the octagon site is rerouted to a Penguin census. The drill rig arrives, crated, labeled seismic equipment, and is stored unopened. Satellite passes are scheduled during polar night, when solar glare blinds the sensors. The octagon is active. In 2022, a ham radio operator in Tasmania picks up a carrier wave on 14.2 MHz. Data bursts, 128-bit encryption, repeating every 11 minutes. The signal strength peaks when the International Space Station is overhead, as if bouncing off the hull. Decryption attempts yield ASCII art, an octagon, a cylinder, a human silhouette. The operator posts the waveform. The frequency goes silent. The ice is thinning. Warming currents eat the Ross Shelf at 30 meters a year. Projections say the octagon will daylight in 80 years, exposed like a black tooth in white gums. The treaty parties extend the moratorium to 2098. The vote is unanimous, no debate. Tonight the green light pulses under 300 meters of ice, patient as a heartbeat. The symbols shift, recording visitors who never came. The cylinder waits in a vault, warm to the touch, whispering in a language older than words. The door is still ajar, waiting for the next team with rebreathers and questions. Lie still. The hum is in your teeth now. 11 hertz, the frequency of bone conduction. The voice is closer, not in your ears but behind your eyes. You were expected. The ice above the octagon is listening. So, are you. The wall is not a wall. It is a mirror. Stand on the deck of the Times, Aurora Australis Times in January 2023, 68 degrees south, and the Ross Ice Shelf stretches left and right until the sky folds over it. The ice is 200 feet high. Blue-green at the base, white on top, and the horizon refuses to bend. GPS reads 78 degrees, 30S, 170 degrees W, but your eyes swear the world ends 10 miles out. The sun circles low, a dull coin behind haze, and its reflection in the ice creates a perfect dome. Sky above, sky below, you, in the middle of a snow globe. A crewman drops a drone over the edge. The feed shows the cliff dropping sheer into black water, waves slapping the base like the ocean is trying to climb. The drone climbs to 500 feet. The shelf still looks flat, endless, a table edge under a curved lid. The pilot laughs nervously. Feels like we're on a plate. Flat Earth begins here, in the optics. The ice acts as a cold mirror, refracting light so the horizon appears higher than physics allows. Superior mirages lift distant cliffs, stack them like pancakes. In 1998, a Japanese icebreaker filmed the shelf from a helicopter. The barrier seemed to rise into the clouds. No curve, no drop. The clip went viral on forums, captioned, "Proof of the edge." Scientists explained, atmospheric ducting, warm air over cold trapping light like fiber optics. The explanation satisfied journals, not bedrooms at 3A. The treaty feeds the fire. No private flights south of 60 degrees without permits that take a year and cost a house. Circumnavigation requires treaty nation escort. In 2019, a flat Earth yacht, the Times Edge Seeker Asterisk, sails from Cape Town with GoPros and a manifesto. They reach the pack ice at 65 south, turn back when the hull starts cracking. The captain live streams, "They won't let us pass the wall." The stream cuts when a Chilean patrol boat boards them for safety violations. The footage ends with the captain's face in shadow. The ice is guarded. Antarctica is the moat. On globe maps, it is a continent, 2 times Texas, wrapped in storms. On flat Earth azimuthals, it is the rim, a ring of ice, holding the oceans in. The United Nations logo, a polar projection with the ice wall as outer circle, becomes Exhibit A. Why put the edge on your flag? They ask. The logo is just a map, but the question sticks. Operation Highjump is the smoking gun. 13 ships, 4,700 men, 8 months planned, home in 8 weeks. Official. Weather. Unofficial. Chased off by Guardians at the edge. Declassified photos show disk aircraft shadowing the fleet. The disks are lens flares, say experts. The holes in the fuselage are bullet holes, say believers. Byrd's 1954 interview plays on loop. That land beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. He meant unexplored territory. They hear beyond the ice wall. The wall has gates. In 2016, a tourist cruise, the Times Ocean Diamond Asterisk, drifts too close to the Ronne ice shelf. Passengers film a straight scar in the ice, 2 miles long, edges melted smooth. The guide calls it a pressure ridge. The scar aligns with magnetic north, ends at a dark opening, wide as a stadium. The ship's captain orders full reverse. The footage uploads to YouTube, hits 1 million views, then vanishes. Mirrors show the opening exhaling steam, warm air fogging the lens. GPS is the enemy. Phones say you are at 89 degrees 59 S, 1 mile from the pole. Step south and the signal drops, reboots, places you north again. Flat earthers call it the reset. Glitches in the matrix. Programmers call it multipath error signals bouncing off ice. The error is real, the explanation ignored. The sun is the clock. In summer, it circles without setting, tracing a tightening spiral as you move south. At the pole, it hovers at 23 degrees altitude, a spotlight on a stage. Flat Earth models say it is a close sun, 3,200 miles up, circling the North Pole hub. The spotlight shrinks with distance, explaining midnight sun and polar night. The math almost works if you ignore seasons and eclipses. Satellites are balloons. Starlink trains crossing the sky are high-altitude drones. The ISS feed is CGI. Notice the bubbles in the spacewalk helmets. The curve of Earth from weather balloons is fisheye lens. Every proof has a counterproof. Every counter a conspiracy. The treaty is the keeper. Article 7 allows inspections, but only of bases, not the wall. Private expeditions need sponsors from signatory nations. In 2021, a crowdfunding campaign raises $2 million for a flat Earth traverse. The permit is denied for environmental impact. The money vanishes into legal fees. The organizer posts a final video from Ushuaia. They won't let us see the edge because there is no globe. The wall fights back. In 2018, a Russian icebreaker, the Times Academic Fedorov Asterisk, rams a Bergy bit and uncovers a steel plate embedded in the shelf. The plate is 10 meters square, riveted, stamped with Cyrillic and a date, 1958. The crew pries it loose. Underneath, a tunnel, round, 5 meters diameter, walls lined with frost but no ice. The air inside is -10 degrees, breathable. They send a drone. The feed shows rails, lights every 50 meters, extending straight for 2 kilometers before the battery dies. The captain seals the tunnel with explosives. Reports, structural anomaly. The plate is flown to Murmansk, melted down for scrap. The illusion is perfect at the edge. Stand on the shelf in whiteout and the world disappears. No up, no down, only white. Compasses spin, altimeters freeze. In 1985, a British ski team crosses the shelf and loses a man. He walks 10 feet into the fog, vanishes. Searchers find his tracks ending at a blank wall of snow. No body, no gear. The report blames crevasse. The tracks are photographed, measured, filed. The photos are gone. The wall is patrolled. Drones with infrared spot heat signatures moving along the base at night, too fast for seals, too steady for currents. The signatures form lines, parallel to the shelf, spaced 50 meters apart. The flights are logged as wildlife survey. The data is classified. Flat Earth ends where curiosity begins. A teenager in Ohio launches a weather balloon with a GoPro. It reaches 120,000 feet, shows curvature. The comments call it fake. He launches another with a flat lens. Same curve. The channel is demonetized for misinformation. The treaty renews in 2048. The mining ban lifts. The wall becomes a frontier. Companies bid for ice core rights, seismic surveys, subglacial tourism. The first commercial flight lands at a blue ice runway in 2051. Passengers step out, look south, see the shelf rise like a frozen tsunami. The guide smiles. Welcome to the end of the world. The phrase is on the brochure. The mirror cracks. Warming eats the shelf at 100 feet a year. In 2060, the first berg calves carrying a section of the wall into the open ocean. It floats north, melts off Brazil, reveals a cavity inside. Smooth walls, rails, a sign in faded paint. Achtung, kein Zutritt. The berg is towed to Rio, dissected by scientists. The cavity is natural, say the reports. The rails are glacial grooves. The illusion holds as long as no one looks too close. The wall is ice, the curve is real, the treaty is paper. But at night, when the wind drops and the sun hangs red on the horizon, the mirror is perfect. You could walk to the edge, step off, and fall forever into white. Or you could turn back, fly north, and tell yourself the world is round. The choice is yours. The wall is waiting. If the mirror cracked even a little for you, stay in the reflection, drop a like, ring the bell, and let's keep walking the edge together. Article 7, Paragraph 3, Line 4. Observers shall have complete freedom to visit any area and inspect any installation, equipment, or records at any time, with no right of refusal. It is the treaty's open door, the one nobody walks through. The clause was drafted in a smoke-filled room at the Mayflower Hotel, October 1959, by a subcommittee of 3, a U.S. Navy captain, a Soviet colonel, and a Norwegian diplomat who chain-smoked unfiltered camels. They argued for 6 hours over coffee and vodka. The captain wanted veto power. The colonel wanted cameras. The diplomat wanted lunch. They compromised on complete freedom and adjourned. The wording has never changed. The practice has. The first inspection happened in December 1963. A.U.S.C. 130 out of Christchurch landed unannounced at Mirny Station. The Soviets were ready, vodka chilled, labs spotless, scientists in pressed uniforms. The Americans poked freezers, flipped notebooks, left after 48 hours with frostbite and hangovers. The Soviets reciprocated at McMurdo in January 64. Same script, different accents. Both reports. Nothing unusual. The clause worked. Then it stopped. Between 1965 and 2024, exactly 7 inspections occurred. All announced, all scheduled, all choreographed. The last true surprise was 1972, when a New Zealand team dropped in on Argentina's Esperanza base during a blizzard. They found a generator running on seal blubber and a crate of unlabeled rifles. The Argentines blamed emergency protocols. The rifles vanished before the report was typed. The unspoken clause is the gap between the words and the walk. The treaty says, any time. Reality says, by appointment. A request for inspection must route through diplomatic channels, travel visas, flight clearances, Weather windows. The process takes 6 to 9 months. By the time the plane lands, the secret is either gone or gift-wrapped. The vault is in the logistics. Antarctica has no roads, no hotels, no Uber. You need a nation to host you. The host controls the runway, the fuel, the food. In 2001, a Brazilian team requested a snap visit to China's Kunlun station at Dome A. The Chinese approved in principle, then cited runway maintenance for 8 months. When the Brazilians finally arrived, the station was pristine. The drill site capped, the data drives wiped. The inspection report, exemplary cooperation. The clause has teeth, but they are plastic. Violations are punished by consensus. In 1998, a Russian trawler dumped bilge oil off King George Island. The evidence, satellite photos, oil slicks, dead penguins, was presented at the consultative meeting in Lima. The Russians apologized, paid a fine to the treaty's environmental fund, and promised better pumps. The fund bought new incubators for McMurdo's lab. The trawler sailed again the next season. The unspoken clause protects the anomalies. In 2004, a joint U.S.-UK seismic array detected a rhythmic thump under the Ronne ice shelf, 11-minute intervals, amplitude rising. The data was shared under Article 2 scientific cooperation. The source was labeled cryo-seismic. The array was dismantled 6 months later for budget reallocation. The raw files are stored at a facility in Colorado, access level TS-SCI. The clause is a mirror of the wall. It promises transparency, delivers reflection. In 2010, a German journalist, Anna Kessler, applied for observer status to inspect waste management at Neumayer III. Her credentials were impeccable. PhD in environmental chemistry, press pass from Times Der Spiegel ***. The application vanished into the German Foreign Office. 6 months later, she received a polite denial. No slots available. She flew commercial to Ushuaia, chartered a yacht, and sailed south as a tourist. At 62 degrees south, the yacht was boarded by a Chilean patrol. Kessler was escorted back, her camera confiscated, her notes copied. The article never ran. The clause has a shadow twin, the emergency protocol. In case of imminent threat to human life, any station may request immediate assistance without inspection. The protocol was invoked in 2012 when a fire broke out at Brazil's Comandante Ferraz station. Argentine, Chilean, and Polish teams arrived within hours, saved lives, rebuilt the base, no questions asked. The fire's cause, electrical fault, was accepted. The station's subglacial lab, studying microbial extremophiles, was not mentioned in the report. The lab reopened 6 months later, bigger, deeper. The unspoken clause is enforced by silence. Whistleblowers vanish into the system. In 2005, a McMurdo mechanic, Tom Harlan, emailed photos to a girlfriend in Denver, crates labeled Project Iceworm 2, stenciled with biohazard symbols, loaded onto a C-17 at night. The email was flagged by NSA filters. Harlan was flown to Christchurch for medical evaluation. He returned 2 weeks later, quieter, with a new job in the galley. The crates were never seen again. The clause is a ledger. Every nation keeps score. The US has the most bases, the most flights, the most satellites. Russia has the deepest drills, the longest ice cores. China has the newest stations, the fastest icebreakers. They inspect each other the way poker players watch hands, close enough to count cards, far enough to bluff. The unspoken clause has a ghost. The Madrid Protocol's Annex VI, liability for environmental damage. Adopted in 2005, never ratified. It would make nations pay for spills, collapses, contaminations. The US and Russia block it every year. The annex sits in a drawer in Hobart, unsigned, gathering dust. The clause is a clock. The treaty's consultative meetings tick every spring. Kiev, Beijing, Washington, online during pandemics. Agenda Item 7, Inspection Reports. Always blank. Item 8, Any other business. Always closed session. In 2019, a delegate from Uruguay proposed random drone inspections. The motion was tabled for further study. The delegate was reassigned to fisheries. The unspoken clause is a door with no handle on the inside. In 2021, a pandemic lockdown grounded all flights. Stations ran on skeleton crews, supply drops by parachute. For 6 months, the continent was truly alone. Satellite data from that period publicly available shows heat blooms under the BYRD'S, neutrino spikes at Ice Cube, a magnetic reversal over Wilkes Land. The data was archived, then redacted. The lockdown ended. The clause resumed its nap. The clause is a whisper in the mess hall. Old-timers at McMurdo tell newbies, inspect what they show you, ignore what they don't. A carpenter in 2008 found a sealed container under the new dorm, labelled Classified Do Not Open. He pried it. Inside, lead-lined boxes, radiation symbols, shipping manifests dated 1962. He photographed, emailed, was on the next plane north. The container was gone by evening. The carpenter now welds pipelines in Alaska. The unspoken clause is the treaty's heartbeat. It keeps the peace by keeping the secrets. The ice is the witness, the snow the jury, the wind the bailiff. The clause says, freedom. The continent says, not yet. Stand in the doorway of any station at 2 a.m. when the generators thrum and the aurora flickers green. The clause is there, in the space between the promise and the practice, in the silence after the question. It is the reason the lights under the ice stay on, the reason the warm rivers keep flowing, the reason the octagon waits. The door is open, no one is coming through. Close your eyes. The room is gone, the bed is gone. You are standing barefoot on the Ross ice shelf at midnight in summer. The sun, a dull ember skimming the horizon, painting the snow, peach and blood. The air is -40 but feels warm on your skin, like breath from an open mouth. The wall rises ahead, 200 feet of blue glass, veins of deeper blue pulsing inside like arteries. You walk. Each step sinks ankle deep, then knee deep. Then the snow is water, warm, lapping at your waist. The wall dissolves into mist. You step through. Inside is green, not grass light, emerald fog swirling knee-high, the ground black volcanic sand that steams underfoot. The octagon stands in the center, door wide, green glow spilling out like liquid. You enter. The walls are warm, symbols crawling across them slow as caterpillars. They spell your name in a language you almost remember. The cylinder from Spartan 1 floats in the middle, spinning gently, humming the 11-minute pulse that matches your heart. You reach. Your fingers pass through metal as if it is smoke. The floor drops away. You fall upward into darkness lit by stars that are too close, too bright. The BYRD'S tower below, peaks punching through the ice like black teeth. Rivers of red water, blood falls multiplied 1,000-fold snake between them, steaming, alive. Gold flakes drift in the current, catching starlight. A dinosaur skeleton the size of a cathedral lies half submerged, ribs glowing with bioluminescent algae. Elvis the Cryolophosaurus lifts his crested head, eyes emerald, and speaks in Byrd's voice. The land beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. His breath is warm on your face. You are flying now. No plane, no wings. The snow cruiser barrels beneath you on balloon tires that leave no tracks, headlights cutting tunnels through the green fog. Inside, men in 1947 uniforms play cards, coffee steaming though the windows are iced shut. One looks up Byrd, younger, eyes sharp. He nods. The cruiser accelerates, vanishes into a tunnel that opens in the glacier wall. The tunnel is lined with rails, lights, every 50 meters, the same as the Norwegian team found. The rails glow. The cruiser's taillights fade to red pinpricks. Then nothing. The scene shifts. You're in the Mulig Hoffman oasis, steam rising from cracks, moss thick as carpet. A steel hatch yawns open. Inside, the Glocke, bell-shaped, mercury swirling in glass rings, humming the same 11-minute pulse. Maria Orsich stands beside it, hair to her waist, eyes starlight. She places the titanium tube in your hands. It is warm, heavy with blueprints that burn to read. For the return, she says. Her voice is the wind through the ice caves. The treaty table appears, floating in the void. 12 men in suits sign the paper again, but the ink is blood, the pen a harpoon. The document grows, wraps around you like a shroud. Article 7 burns gold. Complete freedom. The words melt, drip, reform as Lara's skull. Bullet hole weeping red. She whispers in jargon, "They took more than my life." The skull crumbles to sand, the sand to gold dust, the dust to snow. You are back on the shelf. The wall has vanished. The ocean is a disk, flat, endless, ringed by ice that curves up at the edges like a bowl. The sun is a spotlight 3,200 miles away, circling the North Pole hub. You stand at the center, the pole a brass pin under your foot. The spotlight tightens, the ice glows, the bowl tilts. Water pours over the rim, slow as honey. You slide with it, down the curve that was never there, into the warm dark below. The octagon waits at the bottom, door open, green light pulsing. You step inside. The cylinder is in your hand again, heavier now. The symbols spell a single word: return. The door closes. The hum stops. Silence. Your eyes open. The room is dark, the bed warm. The clock reads 3:11. The hum is still in your chest, 11 beats per minute. The treaty, the wall, the gold, the blood, the skull, they are all there, layered under your skin like ice over stone. Tomorrow night the door will open again. The continent is dreaming through you. Sleep. The wall is breathing with you. Mr. H, signing off from the edge. Good night.